talk about the detailed scheduling and planning, some of the topics there.
Okay.
And I'll bounce a few questions off you. You know, we talk about inventory. So I'm assuming there are two types of inventory generally. One's called dependent demand inventory and one's independent demand. So does this inventory refers to independent demand in this module?
Well, let me kind of rephrase that just to bring us back to speed. When we were doing master scheduling, we were looking at independent demand. Independent demand means stuff I sell, okay? So the demand is independent of my internal processing. It comes from a forecast, it comes from customer orders, so it's independent of other things. Dependent demand is the demand that says, if I want to produce this pen, then I need to have so much ink. I need to have so much refills. I need to have so much of the components. So and they're dependent because when we say I'm going to produce 100 or 100,000 of these pens, then I'm going to need so many of the components. Their order quantity, their needs are dependent on the independent demand.
Yeah, okay. So dependent demand is like, what we take is like a recipe. So say I take this little unit and there are 4 different knobs on that. So if I order 10 of them, 4 times 10 is 40 units. Okay, that's dependent demand, and we'll go into that.
Right.
But the question is, when you're talking about inventory and you're talking about policies and planning, are we talking about different replenishment systems? What are we talking when we talk inventory? Is it just dependent demand, or is it related to independent demand replenishment systems?
Okay. When we're in the detailed planning module, we're really talking about mostly dependent demand.
Okay.
Okay, we've already planned the independent demand. Part of which we didn't mention, part of the production plan will not only be to meet sales, but it will be to increase or decrease our current inventory in independent demand.
Okay. So in this chapter, it's almost all dependent demand.
It's dependent
focus.
demand.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we've created the master schedule, and the output of the master schedule is the master production schedule, and it says I will produce this bicycle or this pen in this quantity at this time. That demand is going to go directly into something we call MRP, Material Requirements Planning, and be the gross requirements of MRP. And then it breaks down, well, we need to look at the bill of material. Now, you mentioned recipe. Excellent analogy here. Can I tell a quick story?
You certainly can.
Okay. Here's the story. I was given the opportunity to teach MRP to some union folks who were being promoted from being assemblers and normal union jobs. They were being promoted into being lead people for their departments. And so the company asked me to come in and say, teach them about MRP. I said, great, I do this all the time, this will be fun. So I went in and I started doing kind of the stuff we're doing. And I'm looking out there and I'm going through this, and I look out at my audience and I see all glassy eyes. No one was really comprehending what I was talking about. So I'm confused because I got to do this for several groups. This is a large company. Got to do this for several groups. And so I was explaining the process to my wife, that I was really concerned and frustrated that I wasn't getting the message across, and how could I do that? And she says, well, why don't you tell me what the process is and maybe I can help you. And my wife is a teacher by profession, high school teacher, and I thought, yeah, well, this isn't going to work because she doesn't know manufacturing at all and that kind of thing. And but you know, I couldn't refuse the question, you know, marital compatibility and so on. Anyway, so I told her what my frustration was, and she says, well, that's so simple. And I says, what do you mean? She says, what do you think I do every week when I go grocery shopping? And the light bulb came on. And it's really the same thing. If you want to look at this strategic planning, What's strategic planning? From determining what we're going to eat. Well, are we vegans or are we meat and potato kind of family? That's kind of the strategic planning, the business plan. Once we determine that, then we can start saying, breaking that down as I want to make the basic kinds of meals, the families, okay, which would be meat and potatoes and this and this and this and this. And so now I know by family what I want to make over a period of time. Now we can take that down into master scheduling. Okay, I need to buy certain kinds of meats. I need to buy certain amounts of potatoes and so on, and I need to do them on a time-phase basis. Okay, so now I know what I need to buy, make. Now, what kind of ingredients do I have? Dependent demand. I need to have salt, I need to have eggs, I need to have this, and I need to have that, and so on. So you see, it's very logical. It's exactly what most of us would do for meal planning. This is the body of knowledge.
And then, you know, so that's a planning process, and then I'm sure any of you had a big party, then that's something, and then you go through these mechanics. Mechanics is basically...
Do I have enough oven space for the turkey dinner? You know? Do I have enough freezer space?
Well,
capacity.
Actually, we're at this place. Okay, let me ask you a question, because you're talking about capacity. In this module, do we actually go into capacity?
Yes, we do. It's called capacity requirements planning.
Okay, I didn't see that as listed as a chapter.
Okay, that was my mistake.
Okay, so I'm just saying, so the students need to know capacity requirement planning for this detailed scheduling and planning?
Yes, and it's very detailed, yes.
Okay, so make sure we left it out. Okay, then the mechanics of MRP is a very simple process once you get it. And outputs too, like for example, if it calls for saying, you know, some people like to have a lot of ketchup with their meals, you know, and then you look and you say, I'm out of ketchup. So then there are signals that need to be done. Now I had one question. In the listing of the topics is managing projects. What is that about?
Oh, for detailed scheduling? That basically, you know, there are, like you said, Thanksgiving would be a project.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you need to manage the projects as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through and talk about, let's not forget the capacity. This is the capacity that we were talking.
This is where it's really talked about.
Detail level,
yes.
Okay. And we also talk about supplier relationship. But some of you guys might be using the online ordering system to bring food in when you have a party or whatever, or you catering or whatever. So you need to deal with supplier relationship and establishing them and what kind of partnership relationship. So that's starting to touch a little bit on the supply chain relationship, but it's much more like you're looking towards their supply chain is a multi-level that other exams go into.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about strategic management of resources, and I think you can give a little better idea what these topics are and how it fits in.
With strategic management of resources, it's assumed that we have gone through the other modules and we understand what the tools are and when to apply which tool, given our business environment and that kind of thing. But management needs to come in and develop that, help us develop the business strategy. We talked about there's a business strategy at the very beginning. Management needs to do this, hopefully with some knowledge of the process that we go through. So strategic management of resources is basically looking at what kind of a business are we, what if a change is going to come into the business, what needs to change? Do we master schedule differently? Do we lot size differently? Do we go from make to stock to assemble to order, for instance? And what does that mean? And all of those kinds of things. So the tools are out there, but there's choices all along in strategic management.
Okay, so this is it. Okay, so the idea is that you have now a fundamental understanding of manufacturing, planning, and control.
Yes.
Okay? And that's the heart of this, the CPIM certification. Knowing that, then you have some understanding, say I want to go to a different type of production environment. So what is going to be involved? So if you have understanding of the components, then you can go and assemble the organizational and the manufacturing in a different approach. And this is what strategic management of resources kind of goes.
Yes. A good example might be, I have a product and it's in the development stage. And that's one kind of an manufacturing environment. But then after the product becomes accepted and it's higher volume, that's a completely different manufacturing
A different way to
environment.
manage it.
Yeah.
The inventory levels.
Exactly, and a different kind of manufacturing, maybe even a different plant or a different location,
Yeah.
you know, factory within a factory kind of thing. This is what strategic management
But
is all about.
But just to be clear, when you take this test, you need to make sure you have those other 3 prior modules
Absolutely.
down.
This is the last test you take because it ties it all together. It's a capstone course.
Now, when it talks about global environment and sustainability, how does this all fit in with those 3 things? I mean, what do we
Well,
get? I'm just asking,
yeah.
like, I see this as a chapter heading,
Uh-huh.
right? So how does this all fit? Or is this an additional area I need to study?
It fits fairly well, but it's not the detail of my plant. Now we're looking at, hey, this is, let's face it, we're in a global world now, you know. We need to deal with other countries, other cultures, other places.
Okay, so we have in our back idea like MRP and production planning and all this. And so we're saying maybe we're looking to compare U.S. plant with a plant in Mexico, say.
Okay.
So what type of questions, or am I being too specific? Maybe we shouldn't go as, but like, as I'm preparing for the test, what type of questions should I might be facing?
Well, you'd be facing questions like manage. Let's talk empowerment for just a moment.
Yeah.
Change management. That's part of
Yeah.
that's part of the course. A manager comes into a situation and sees that something needs to be done. He or she should A, B, C, D, and you know what fits in with a modern, more progressive kind of company. Should they empower the people? Should they come in and take over because they're senior management and fix the problem? You know, probably not. Not in a newer world. But should they empower? Should they remove the barriers that people encounter with this kind of a problem? Yeah.
Okay, so you need to have the depth of understanding, and then on top of that, there's a different layer.
This course, you need to take off your planner hat and put on your executive hat. You're executive now, and so the situations are similar that they were before, but now we're not talking about changing the order quantity or moving this order in or moving that order out or doing those kinds of things. And we're talking about long-term, more strategic management activities.
And then there's another thing called infrastructure systems. What does that, do you have any input in that, or?
Well, again, what kind of manufacturing facility do I need? What kind of distribution facilities do I need? Those are all infrastructures.
The hard component. Okay, yeah. Very good. Okay, so this is the last module we recommend you take.
Absolutely.
And then hopefully if you've studied well and you pass all your exams, you get certified. But that's not the end of your story in terms of your life learning. You know, I mean, the idea is that you're going to have to keep learning.
Absolutely.
And I think to retain your certification, that you need to be active. And I don't need to go into specific, but you can look at Apex website or whatever. That's being involved and going to different professional developed meetings. There are many ways. So even like the recommendation I have, now I'm coming as a professor, is we give you the material, we give you the books, we give you the content. In fact, the real learning occurs is when you put it together.
Yes.
And that process of learning, that process of actually working with others and sharing, and that process of continuously updating, I think will be critical. You know, and certification is just one route of that learning process.
What certification tells your company, your supervisors and management is that you're willing to go and study and learn new things. And more so, you're not just coming to work, you know, 8 hours a day, that kind of thing. You're willing to understand that. What happens is with certification, you become much more professional. You know the most logical moves to make in order to do whatever management asks. Example, when I was in production inventory control early in my career, I was working for a company where sometimes finance would come in and say, our inventories are too high, you have to cut inventories. Management would buy into that, and we'd have to cut inventories. There's a professional way to do that, a right way to do that. Or there's a wrong way to do that, for sure. Okay? And then, sooner or later, manufacturing would get the upper hand, and they'd come in and say, you know, we need more inventory. We can't operate this way. And there's a better way, a professional way to operate that, make those decisions. There's a better way to go to management with your suggestions.
So it's a couple, what you're also saying is don't reinvent the wheel. There's some methods and processes to help you.
And they're not always intuitive.
True.
So the professional knows when they're intuitive and knows when they're not.
Yes, it's not necessarily obvious.
So that's what we're trying to do, is help you become a professional at what you're doing rather than just a worker bee, you know, doing the same thing over and over again.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you taking your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.